Good afternoon and welcome to IVMF's VetNet webinars. My name is Elvis Avdic and today we have partnered up with National Veteran Small Business Coalition, PSBC, to talk about government contracting and tips on how to win contracts. Today with us, we have Zach Armstrong, Deputy Executive Director for NVSBC, and Scott Sample, that currently serves as a part of the NVSBC executive staff. But before I pass it over to Zach and Scott to introduce themselves and kick off this amazing session, I would just like to say thank you all for submitting your questions ahead of time. We definitely pass those over to Zach and Scott, and they will address those during this session. Just a reminder that this session is being recorded, and if you do if you have registered for the session, you will get a recorded link along with the short survey. So please make sure you guys fill out the survey, let us know how you did, and make sure you let us know what other topics you would like us to do. That being said, if you have questions during this session, please type in the chat box and I will make sure that Zach and Scott sees it. You can unmute yourself and we'll get to you. Raise your hand and we'll get to you so that way you can unmute yourself and ask a question. That being said, I'm gonna pass it over to Zach and Scott to introduce themselves and kick off this session. Zach, Scott, welcome.
Thank you, Elvis. It's a privilege to be here today. As Elvis shared, I'm the Deputy Executive Director with NVSBC. I've had a chance to work in the veteran nonprofit space for nearly a decade now. I had a lot of military family connection with my grandfather, my uncle, my brother, all serving in the Army. We actually have a cousin who's active duty Coast Guard right now. And, it's been a privilege of mine to, again, work in the Veteran Service Organization space, but had a chance to work in many different professional environments, corporate America, academia, some consulting, and now towards my passion with, nonprofits, serving vets. So again, I've enjoyed, watching veterans use their talents out of active duty, out of the Guard, out of reserve, come home to their communities and thrive. So I enjoy being part of that. And, my colleague and my friend, Scott Semple, who's joining us today, we're going to have a dialogue today, but as Elvis mentioned, he's part of the executive staff as well with NVSBC. Some of his extensive knowledge and experience and strategy and operations, and specifically how in that federal government marketplace. Scott has served as a senior business executive, an entrepreneur, technologist. I could go on and on, but ultimately, he's helped veterans and those serving in the commercial clients globally be successful. And the other part is he's helped NVSBC become what it is today. It's kind of part of his brainchild, and all of his efforts and talents have allowed NVSBC to grow. To be here today, sharing some of our best practices and what Scott's learned with you. So as I described, that's who we are. As Elvis described, we're going to have a little bit of a conversation, a dialogue. We're no necessarily any presentation PowerPoint today, but we're here to talk about veteran contracting opportunities within federal agencies. We're going to lean on Scott's experiences and expertise. One of the really neat things about this platform is we've already received many questions from you. So we're going to address some of those. And, as Elvis mentioned, please continue to share questions so we can have a rich dialogue at the end and have a little bit of a lightning round, for lack of a better term. So, without, anything more, we're going to dive right in. So Mr. Scott Semple, one of the things you and I have had a chance to do is have rich dialogue and great length, leaning on your experiences working with small businesses, particularly those contracting, with the federal government. What would you share today regarding the marketplace itself? So thinking the marketplace and what it's like for veteran small businesses, I think that'd be a great place for us to start.
Great. Well, thank you, Zach. And thank you, IVMF, for the opportunity to engage with the VetNet community. Our conversation today is entitled Government Contracting Tips to Win Contracts. Well, this is a huge topic, and we'll do our best to address it in a short time together today and provide some ideas and insights. But right up front, we wanted to identify your three go-to resources that you can depend on to help you become and always remain what we call a procurement-ready firm. Procurement-ready firm means a firm that's ready to compete for and get awarded, and most importantly, deliver really high-quality services as a veteran small business to either the federal government or to commercial entities, wherever you're doing business. So those three go-to resources that you can always count on are, number one, not a surprise, IVMF. I'm not saying that because they sponsor this VetNet series. I'm saying that because I've been doing this for about 30 years. I've never seen an organization as capable of supporting veterans and veteran small businesses as IVMF. They are dedicated, they are talented, and they really have terrific resources. Lean into IVMF, learn everything you can about them. Second resource, Zach and I, and the company we represent, the National Veteran Small Business Coalition, NVSBC. What is NVSBC? We're the nation's largest veteran service organization. It's a fancy way of saying a nonprofit that specifically focuses on veteran small business, veteran-owned small businesses that serve as government contractors. That's our only space. So kind of unique. We have a lot of resources available. We'll talk to you a little bit about that as we go along. The third set of resources that I'd highly encourage you to lean into are the veteran small business resources from the Small Business Administration, or SBA. They have a whole bunch of different resources available. I'm just going to mention two. Number one, the Veteran Business Outreach Centers, or VBOCs. The VBOCs are 22 centers that provide programs like Boots to Business that you may have participated in as you came out of service, and a variety of other services and capabilities. The other resource from SBA I'll mention is the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or PTACs. So whereas the VBOCs provide very large scale programs like Boots to Business, PTACs tend to be available to you as a resource and guidance center, and can even provide you a little bit of one-on-one counseling and resources. So those are just three of the long list of valuable resources that are dedicated to your success. We'll mention those again at the end of our program today. So federal government contracting, or being what we call a GovCon, government contractor, it's propelled a lot of small businesses to growth and success. And in particular, it's a really attractive marketplace for veterans to focus their business investments. And why not? Every veteran has already been an employee of the federal government. So I already know how to work for the federal government. And the government is huge, right? So it's got to be a great market for anything that I want to sell. So everybody says, let's be a GovCon. Well, like any marketplace, it requires a few things that you need to think about. In particular, a good business plan, which in the case of a government, in the case of being a GovCon, means having a solid understanding of two sets of issues. Number one, your business. What do you want to sell to the government? What products and or services are you going to sell to the government? I always like to say, if you're going to open a restaurant, you better know everything there is to know about the food service business. Sure, food and food prep, that's great, but you got to know labor and labor markets. You got to know product safety. You know, if you're going to open a restaurant, you really want to know the impact of a pandemic. Who saw that one coming? And guess what? That put about 50% of small restaurants out of business. So having a good business plan and being a procurement-ready GovCon means knowing every aspect of what you can possibly know about your business. The second thing that you really want to know is about the business of the federal government, the business of the federal government. We're all used to being customers of the federal government, right? But you need to think about the other side of that equation. So things like, who builds that system that allows you to make a reservation to go camping at a federal website, at a federal campground? Who built the system for the reservations? Or when you call into the Veterans Administration for help on benefits, who's staffing that help desk? All right. What you need to do is understand as much as you possibly can about what does the federal government buy? How much of the government, how much of that does the government buy? More importantly, how does the federal government buy what you want to sell? That's a tricky part, right? Because if you want to do business with a bank or an insurance company, or if you own a lawn care service and you want to mow the lawns of the local insurance company, you can just do business with them. In the federal government, you need to have a contract vehicle. We'll talk about a little bit of that in a minute. And then also, what qualifications do you need to be a successful GovCon? We'll try to cover a lot of those, but again, it's a lot of information to cover. Lots of great questions here. So first and foremost, before we just dive into how do you get government work, let's kind of frame the issue, right? Let's talk about that business of the federal government. How big is that? You ready for some statistics? Here's 6 statistics that probably are kind of surprising. Every single year, the federal government makes about 11 million contract awards. 11 million. Put that into an easier context to understand. That's 30,000 contract awards every day, 365 days a year. That's a lot of contracting. How much does that add up to? That's about $700 billion worth of acquisitions in 2022. Easy to say, the US government is the single largest acquisition engine on the earth. True statement. Federal government's goal is to make about a quarter, 25%, actually 23% currently, of all awards to small businesses. That sounds like a terrific opportunity, but that's 25% of $700 billion. Confusing marketplace, big marketplace. But here's another statistic that'll kind of blow your mind. 95% of all of those contract awards, remember the 30,000 awards I said are happening today? 95% of those will be made to small and mid-cap companies. Well, wait a minute. Those two numbers don't jive. 95% of awards are going to go to small businesses, but that's only 23% of the total dollar value. Well, that's because buying $1,000 worth of office supplies from a small business, that's an acquisition. So isn't buying one aircraft carrier at $14.3 billion. Okay, like the most recent aircraft carrier. Just saying, the numbers are a little skewed, but the point remains, there's a tremendous amount of contracts that do go out to small businesses every minute of every day. There's about $1 billion worth of new contract opportunities in the services sector alone that are contracted for each business day. Now, here's another statistic that kind of surprises people. How many firms do business with the federal government? Well, of all US businesses, big and small, less than 4% of those businesses do business with the federal government. 4%. That's crazy. Well, why is that? Because it's tough to qualify sometimes, because it's a complicated marketplace, but you're way ahead of the stream because you're learning how to do business with the federal government. Last point here of the 6. Any contract that's awarded by the federal government that's got an anticipated award value between $2,500 and $100,000, any award, those are all reserved for small disadvantaged, woman-owned, and yep, small veteran-owned businesses. That's because of a set of regulations called SAP, Simplified Acquisition Procedures, that are a part of the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations. Well, I'll stop right there. Part of the confusion with dealing with the federal government is all these silly acronyms and words and all that kind of good stuff. So we'll try to cut through it a little bit and give you a good set of ideas. So what does all this mean? It means that being a procurement-ready, veteran-owned small GovCon could be a really fertile environment in which to grow your small business. But like we said a few minutes ago, it requires three really important things. Number one, a good business plan. Number two, and I'll tell you what a good business plan looks like in a few minutes. All right, number two, a solid understanding of your business. Don't just tell me that you want to sell TVs or you want to sell gymnastics to the federal government. You know, you want to open a gym down at the FBI headquarters in DC. No, you have to have a good business plan. You have to tell me exactly what you are selling to the federal government. And third, you got to really have a clear understanding of what the federal government buys and how does it buy that stuff. Those are all really important issues to understand how to become a procurement ready federal small business. Make sense, Zach?
It does. For me, I'm sure there's all kinds of light bulbs going off with everyone on the call. You know, to help frame this up even more, Scott, you know, you talk about, you know, those three requirements, you know, like what do they need to be procurement ready? I think people are probably chomping at the bit to get into some of those details. The foundation of those statistics are going to help, you know, but ultimately, like, we know the topic of the call, the 5 things to know about, you know, veteran contracting opportunities at the federal agencies, you know, hoping you can simplify some of this complexity. You know, folks here, like, this is not well understood, it's complex. You know, what resources, like, what are the questions these folks should be asking themselves? And what are the resources, what are some of the answers to get them that next step of doing business with the federal government?
Yeah, it is a complex area, Zach. And there's probably 105 questions, but unfortunately, this is not an 18-hour seminar. So in just a few minutes, let's pick out 5 questions that kind of make sense and everybody really ought to know. Number one, what do I need to qualify for GovCon opportunities? What kind of fairy dust do I have to have? Do I have to do something special, right? Do I have to speak 3 languages? No, real simple. And give you a few bullet points. What do I have to do to qualify for GovCon opportunities? Number one, you got to have that clear business plan that fits on 5 pages or less and tells me, what are you going to sell to the federal government? How are you going to propose to sell that to the federal government? And you need a really clear plan of action that is specific steps, like attending a VetNet webinar, that are essential to becoming and remaining intelligent about the federal government and to make you and your company procurement ready. Number two, you got to make sure that your firm is organized so that you can qualify as a veteran-owned small business, either a VOSB, veteran-owned small business, or an SDVOSB, service-disabled veteran-owned small business. You got to make sure your company's organized in a way such that you can qualify to do business under those categories. Why? Because the SBA does provide some special accommodations for 4 categories of small businesses. Okay, remember I said 23% of all federal acquisition goes to small businesses. Within those smalls, there's 4 categories: women, hub zone or habitually underutilized areas of the country, right? Small disadvantaged businesses, SDVs, and SDVOSBs. You want to make sure that you can qualify for whatever you're qualified as. So, for example, to qualify as an SDVOSB or VOSB, the firm has to be owned and controlled by a veteran in good standing. Okay, owned means the legal documentation, the operating agreement, the thing you got to have to be a legal entity, right? That document has to say that you, the veteran, own 51% or more of the company. Secondly, it's got to be controlled by a veteran. What's that mean? You don't just create the company and go golf in Florida and say, hey, Zach, run my business for me, okay? No, you got to be the person signing the checks, okay? Sweating bullets every Friday to make payroll. That's you, okay? So you have to understand how to qualify for the requirements, and we'll talk about this again in a minute, right? To qualify as the most favorable level of veteran small business that you possibly can. Third, you got to register your firm to do business with the federal government. How do you do that? You go to SAM, S-A-M, sam.gov. Simple. You go to sam.gov to do business as a GovCon. You got to register on that site and get what we call a UEI, Unique Entity Identifier. Now, if I talked to you 5 years ago, I would have called that a DUNS number, D-U-N-S. DUNS has been replaced by UEI. It's just a number, and it says your number XXXXX, right? Without that number, you're not qualified to do business with the federal government. Good news, there's no cost for you to register on SAM. So that's pretty cool, right? You do have some qualifications. You will see you have to actually provide a TIN, taxpayer identification number. What's that mean? You got to be a real live registered company. It can't just be, hey, I'm Scott Semple. I'd like to do business with the federal government. Nope. I own a couple companies. Those companies are registered to do business with the federal government. I registered them through SAM. That's where we all go. Okay. Beyond that, then you want to register as a veteran-owned small business or a service-disabled veteran-owned small business with the Center for Verification and Evaluation, CVE. Currently, CVE is an entity, a little group within the Veterans Administration. Well, just to add complexity to it, as of January 1 of next year, CVE is actually going over from the VA to the SBA. Kind of makes sense. The SBA manages the woman-owned program, the 8A program, which is part of the Small Disadvantage program, and they also administer the Hub Zone program. So all those are entities that are managed by SBA. The SBA will also be administering the CVE program. CVE is the credential you want if you are going to do business as a veteran-owned small business in government contracting. These steps are kind of basics to qualify you as a veteran GovCon, and those are all things that you can go through with the VBOX or the PTAX or with us. How do I find government opportunities? That's always question number 2. Okay, great. I registered on SAM. I got myself CVE certified. Where the heck's all the business? Well, there's federal acquisition regulations, things like the Transparency Act, that require that all federal procurements are transparent, that we can see them all. They're all advertised and they're all available to all qualified businesses. What's a qualified business? Got to be on SAM, and a whole bunch of other qualifications depending on the solicitation, but that's a starting point. So all those federal acquisitions are listed somewhere. Tell me, Scott, where are they? Well, number 1, go back to SAM. Same place you registered. It's got a list of all upcoming federal acquisitions. No surprise there. Federal government, honest to God, tries to keep things kind of simple, right? It's big, it's complex, but they really do try to make everything transparent and make it visible. Number 1, sam.gov has a listing of everything. Number 2, the SBA resources I mentioned, the PTAPs in particular, they have access to everything in the solicitation universe that you would want to get your hands on. They can help you go in and say, I do this kind of work. I only want to work in the state of Omaha, in the state of Nebraska, all right? They can help you find those opportunities, all right? So there's a whole bunch of no cost. And again, these are all no cost to you resources to figure out where the business is. I'll also tell you, there is a whole industry of private firms that charge to help you find opportunities. Resources like GovWin from Deltek, Bloomberg Government from, Bloomberg, a resource called FedMine, and tons of others. These are databases that basically take the publicly available information and add a heck of a lot more information to it. They'll do research. They'll say, here's who's going to be competing. They'll say, here's who's the incumbent, right? Scads and scads of information. Those resources are available to you at a cost. Some of them are not too bad. Some of them, boy, they're expensive. So you have to be judicious in thinking about what resources you're going to use. So all the information is available to you. The trick is knowing what you're looking for. So this is why it's so important to get connected with those 3 resources that I mentioned up front, right? NVSBC, IVMF, SBA, several other resources, but us 3 for sure. We're available to help you sort through those 30,000 solicitations a day and try to kind of make sense of it. Question number 3. Excuse me. Why is teaming so important in federal selling? This is a really important question. All right. Why is teaming important in GovCon? Because GovCon is big. It's confusing and it's frustrating. Wait. Much better reason. Because veterans help veterans. I've been doing this for 30 years in the federal government. I've done it with all sorts of different classifications, big, small, this, that. I've never seen any cluster of small businesses that are more willing to help each other than veterans. And I'm not kidding here. I live this every day. Zach lives this every day. And we'll tell you about some things that we do as NVSBC to make this a bit more available to you. But the reason you want to do teaming is if you're going to throw yourself in that deep end of the pool, find somebody else you can jump in with that's going to help buoy you up, not drag you down, right? But that is a very important part of doing business in the federal government, all right? So the other thing is, as you grow and you're competing for more and more federal contracting, what you'll find, and this is very unique to the federal marketplace, right? As you progress in the federal marketplace, the majority of solicitations are done in teams. I'll prime, you sub. We hear this all the time, right? You know, hey, I got to paint this big house. Tell you what, I'll take the front and the left side. You do the right side, Zach, and get your brother to do the back side. That's teaming, all right? In federal government, well, we team because of the volume of work. We also team because the government buys a lot of stuff. And so they may issue a help desk solicitation that has some documentation. Oh, you don't do documentation. Oh, you know what Zach does? Let me get Zach on this thing. All right. Now we team, I'm prime, you're sub, that works. All right. Here's a key question on teaming. How do you establish teaming partners? Networking. There is nothing more important than networking. What you're doing right now. Joining in on opportunities to learn from each other, figure out where you're going, where the other guy or gal is going, where you could go together. That's just incredibly important. And again, we'll talk to you a little bit about that in a second. In the context of NVSBC, that's a part of our mission statement that I'll talk about in a minute. Right? Fourth question I always get. Okay, wise guy, how much money do I need to get started in GovCon? What do you think, Zach? A couple of million? Let's just write a check each for $500,000, start up a company.
Done.
Yeah, done. Yeah. And your check and my check will both bounce all the way to the left. Okay. Not going to happen. Okay. How much money do you need? Easy answers. Number one, you got to incorporate your business. Okay. You're not going to do business as a private entity with the federal government. You got to have an EIN. You got to have a tax number, right? An employee identification number or a TIN, right? You got to incorporate your business and create the legal documents called an operating agreement, a couple other documents. How much is that going to cost? Well, a simple business, I want to open a daycare in a federal center. You can probably put together an operating agreement for $100 using some software, you know, LegalZoom or one of those resources off the web. All right. For a more complex business, you're probably going to require the use of the support of a lawyer. And for example, my last company, I created all the legal documents. It cost me less than $5,000. Sounds like a lot of money, but I'll tell you what, I bet on me every day. You bet on you. You got to have the legal documents. That's an important part of getting business. Number two, you got to register on SAM. Remember how much that costs, Zach? Zero, nothing. Third, you got to network with other service-disabled veteran-owned businesses at events and conferences. Network with those. Okay, that means you're going to go to all the veteran events in your area. How do I find those? Go to the NVSBC events, go to the IVMF events, go to the PTAC and the VBOX. They'll tell you where these events are. Go to the VA website. The VA website has a thing called Direct Access. Direct Access is a whole series of events around the country that are specifically for veteran entrepreneurs. All right. How much does that kind of networking cost? Geez, if it's in your hometown, you go to an event, you probably got to, pony up for a couple of beers. might get out for 50 bucks. If you got to travel to a conference, attend a conference for a few days, that might be $1,000, right? So it can vary widely, but you need to think about investing in networking, right? You need to attend conferences. There are a variety of conferences from IVMF, NVSBC, SBA, VA that are training events, networking events. Those are extremely important. Agencies also have events, right? Very often called solicitation conferences, a variety of events. Those are really important. That's an opportunity to meet with ready for another acronym, PDM, Procurement Decision Maker. Those are the people who actually say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I'm going to be running this project. I'm looking to see if you can do this business, that you can do this work for me. That's your opportunity to give them your elevator pitch. What's an elevator pitch? That's you in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. The elevator pitch analogy is you get on the elevator on the ground floor of a building. Oh my gosh, standing next to you is the person you want to sell to. You got until the 7th floor of that building to impress them with your company. You got 2 minutes. Everybody wants to rehearse their elevator pitch and have an extremely fluid way of describing your value proposition. Last thing, you want to hire and prepare resources, or the services or the products that you're going to sell to the government. That's a cost doing business. So how much money do you need to get started? Sorry, but it depends entirely on your particular situation. But again, this is the kind of conversation that you can have with the resources from the Small Business Administration. They exist to help you get into business and succeed and become and remain procurement ready. So how do I learn more about contracting with the federal government? Well, again, there's a whole bunch of different resources, right? One of them is IVMF. What do? You participate, you engage, you ask questions, then you engage some more because your questions uncovered better questions, okay? NVSBC. So who the heck are we? We're babbling at you here for an hour today. The National Veteran Small Business Coalition is a 12-year-old organization, but like I said, it's the largest not-for-profit organization serving that group of companies that want to be veteran GovCons. Okay, how many are there? Well, again, throw some numbers at you. In the US, there are about 30 million small businesses. 30 million. That's a lot of competition. About a little less than 2 million of those 30 million are veteran-owned small businesses. Now, that 2 million includes the dry cleaner on the corner. That guy was a veteran, and it's the restaurant over here. That woman did a lot of cooking in the Army, right? Those are commercial veteran-owned businesses. 2 million. There's a subset of those that do business as GovCons. That's about 50,000. That's the group that NVSBC serves. The 50,000 companies that serve as federal GovCons. What do? We have 3 parts of our mission statement. Number 1, networking. We create a whole bunch of networking opportunities for you to engage and participate with other veteran-owned small businesses, learn, establish teams, understand what else is out there. Networking is the first part of our mission. Second is training. We run a variety of training, just like VetNet. We run a variety of free training programs, as well as for fee-based training programs to help you learn more about federal opportunities. I'll mention 2 real quickly, excuse me. NVSBC, and Zach in particular, runs a wonderful program with another member of our team, Earl Morgan. They run what we call the Charlie Mike CM 22 webinar series. These are pretty much weekly webinars, very much like this, on veteran-specific contracting issues. Contact us and we can get you connected for that. Second part of our mission is training. And another big event that we run, coming up in the middle of May, by the way, is the nation's largest veteran small business conference. That's called VETS, VETS 22. VETS 22 is being run in Orlando. And you can get more information on that from our website, which is nvsbc.org. The third part of our mission is advocacy. We spend a heck of a lot of time and an awful lot of money to promote veteran opportunities to Congress. So again, we don't do state contracting. We don't do local contracting. We're all about federal contracting. So we spend a lot of time and money advocating for veteran opportunities with Congress. And that's a very important part of our mission. Training, networking, and advocacy, that's what NBSBC is all about. SBA has all sorts of resources available to you, as I mentioned before. And one word of advice, and boy, Zach and I have seen this a million times, avoid the get-rich-quick schemes. Hey, Mr. Veteran, Ms. Veteran, I can help you get into the federal government. How many times have you seen those emails? Too many. All right. If it looks too good to be real, it's too good to be real. Pretty much that gives you a kind of rundown on some of the ideas I think of. How's that sound, Zach?
It's awesome. Ready to jump in with a lot of questions. So thank you all. Keep them coming. We'll do a little bit of a lightning round. Elvis, I know in a few minutes you're going to support some of this as well. But Scott, if we could keep some of your answers to 30 seconds if possible. First one to tee up for you that we received, like, Scott, if you were the veteran business owner today, like in the marketplace, what gets you excited about being there today? Like what opportunities exist now that didn't before?
Boy, rocket round. I love it. Lightning round. Okay, 30 seconds. Federal government is absolutely committed to small business. I think the Biden administration, and we are by the way, we are a completely non-political, apolitical organization. Doesn't matter who's in office. However, what we're seeing in the current administration is an absolute commitment to small business. It's there. Many organizations, including IBMF, NBSBC, others, we're also expanding our capabilities. I guess you'd say we're maturing. NVS in particular. Zach is relatively new to our organization and a gift from God. The guy understands his business. He's helping us get our act together. All right, we're working our tails off to be better at what we do and deliver better networking programs and better training programs. Third thought that makes me kind of excited about what I'm seeing is teaming opportunities for veteran small businesses are increasing dramatically. In other words, there are a number of federal contracting vehicles coming out in 22, 23, 24 in the current forecast that absolutely are veteran friendly. Never seen as much opportunities before.
All right, super helpful. Another question talks like you guys have mentioned networking a few times, networking events, but could you address mentoring for government contracting? Like, what does that look like? How does that exist in your language?
So there are formal programs called mentor protege. What's a mentor protege? Mentor protege is an actual program that is a program you submit for, excuse me, with the Small Business Administration. And it says a mentor, a big company, and it doesn't have to be that big. This can be a company that's 30, 40, $50 million. In general, the size limit for a small business in most cases is 30 million bucks a year, right? So a big business mentor says, hey, I'm going to help you small business. We form a mentorship or mentor protege relationship. Really, in the simplest form, though, Zach, mentorship is kind of a fancy word for teaming, fancy word for partnering. Come to our conferences, right? Participate in IVMF events, go to SBA events, right? There are people here at those events who are more than willing to help you. And again, unusually so in the veteran marketplace. Veterans do not turn their backs on veterans.
Another detail one I've seen a couple times is TIN and EIN the same? Like, if not, do I need both of them?
TIN and EIN are the same thing. Employer identification, tax identification number. Just depends on whether you're talking to the IRS at tax time, that's your TIN, right? Or your employee identification number for qualifying for unemployment. You have to have unemployment qualifications. They're going to look for your EIN. Same thing.
Another question, and a couple of them around funding, like securing initial funding. Particularly if I may or may not have like high credit use due to personal, COVID issues. Any suggestions, or where do I go to learn about, securing startup funding?
This is a really great question, Zach, and in particular, a really timely question, right? Whose credit card is not maxed out these days? Okay. I want to start a business, but last couple of years haven't really been that great. My wife got sick, my husband got sick. I've been, how do you get started? Let's be brutally honest, folks. Banks are not in love with small businesses. We're what they call high risk. Okay. So, first and foremost, it is very, very important, right back to what I was saying, that you have the clearest possible business plan that tells me, the participant that you're going to go to, right, tells me how you're going to go about doing business with the federal government. Okay. Then you do need some initial, if you do need some funding, and let me preface that by saying there are ways to bootstrap or get your business started for free. Hey, a lot of us worked for company A while we were getting company B, our own company, started. That's just a reality. I did that in 1995 when I first got started, back before most of you were born. But funding then becomes an issue of, can I get this started by bootstrapping from other things that I'm doing? If I do need business, let's say I'm going to buy goods for the federal government, one of the first resources that you want to think about is going to the Veterans Administration, right? And using the resources of either the Veterans Administration or the Small Business Administration. The SBA has a program called the 7A loan program. All right, 7A loans are backed by the federal government, but they also go through a bank. Requirements might be a little high. There are other types of funding through private resources, right? But always, 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 the most likely resource for the funding to start your company is you. Hate to tell you that, right? But that's just a reality. Lots of other things we could talk about there, but that's my 30-second answer.
Yeah, that's great. Two things that could be combined, or if you want to separate them, Scott, talking about starting business as it relates to real estate contracting or like media focused. So we have like two different, real estate, media, like where would they go to get started in terms of more or less finding opportunities to bid on things like that?
Right. So great question. Again, and I love that example. Two things far afield, real estate on one end, media on the other. Okay. Guess what? Transparency Act says that if the GSA, the General Services Administration, excuse me, which is also called the government's landlord, GSA does the majority, or I think the biggest real estate buyer side in the federal government. If you want to do business with them, guess what? All their acquisitions, an office, a building, some ground, that's all listed on sam.gov. That's a good place to go to figure out first, what does the government buy in real estate or in media services? All right. So understanding what the government buys in that context, that's a great starting point. That's what you need to do. Then as you get into specific, for instance, media, all right, how many opportunities are there for media services in the government? Oh my gosh, it is a vast opportunity area. Think of it this way. Every judge in the office of the courts, every judge, every bailiff, everybody is trained. I ran a program years ago to help develop video training programs for the judges and bailiffs all across the country. All right. Every TSA agent, Transportation Services Administration, TSA agent under Department of Homeland Security, every TSA agent gets training. They do video training all the time. Those media services are purchased. These are great questions, Zach. This is kind of the background of doing business with the federal government. So where would you look for media opportunities, right? Go to SAM and a couple of those other resources I mentioned, right? Go to the agencies and look at what types of media services that particular agency is acquiring, and then figure out how could you qualify for that work. I'll stop there.
Perfect. One of the questions, Evelyn asked a question I think I've asked you and I've asked some of my other mentors, just to get started, like, is there a text or a manual on government procurement? I'd love to hear your answer again.
Yeah, that's one of those ones, you go to Barnes and Noble and you see these X for dummies, right? Windows for dummies, opening a restaurant for dummies. There seems to be a book for dummies on everything. Okay. 2 points. One, you're not a dummy. You're people who are looking at the right way to get into business. That means you're attending webinars, you're listening, you're learning. That's the most important thing you can do, in my opinion. Okay. Second, the most important thing you can do, teaming. All right. Because every business dealing with government is so unique. You just mentioned two, real estate and media services. Oh my golly. Okay. There's not a book where I can go and say, here's how to do business in real estate in the federal government. I don't know that book. Okay. But there certainly are, some books that are absolutely good resources for you to learn more about that. We can cover some of those specific books in a different follow-up conversation.
Perfect. Okay, another question, like how can I find out, what I qualify for as a veteran spouse to start a business? Recognizing like some things are, husband, wife may or may not be entitled for, but where does someone start there? As
so
GovCon.
That's a topic that is absolutely right up the qualifications of the Institute for Veterans and Military Families, a group called IVMF. There's no organization that I'm aware of that has spent as much time and money researching work opportunities, employment opportunities for veteran spouses as IVMF. So I would kind of defer that one back to IVMF. I'm aware they have resources available to help you research that. Having said that, the more you understand what you are trying to provide to the federal government, that is a set of information you can research using sam.gov, using some of the other available websites that tells you, does the government buy X, this thing that I want to provide? And that way, get information on it. Having said all that, Zach, spouse employment in the federal sector is a tough situation. In the military, you move every 3 years. How do you get a job in that new town? It is a very, very difficult thing. And again, I go right back to it. There's no group I've ever seen that's done as much research in this area as IVMF.
That's helpful. Elvis, I know I'm taking many of these questions, so please jump in if I'm missing anything. But so Scott, there's a very specific question of like support mentorship around preparing business plans and bids. Like what comes to your mind when you hear those two separate things?
That they are two very separate things. Don't ever confuse writing your business plan with writing a bid. Nope, totally separate. There is an art form, and I don't use that term lightly. Right? There's an art form around writing proposals for the federal government, just like there is writing grants. There's different ways to write those, and you have to understand. Now, there are some really good books on how to write a proposal for the federal government, right? Training videos, books, resources available to you on that. Backing up to business plans. Writing a business plan, there's multiple different resources that are available to you to help you with that. Number one, I mentioned the PTAF before. That is a big part of what they do. Secondly, SCORE. I forget what SCORE stands for, but it's retired executives. There's a subset, I am told, there is a subset of SCORE that is specifically focused on helping veteran small businesses develop and refine their business plans. Third, go to your Chamber of Commerce. Here in I live in the Washington, D.C. area. There's a Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce. Within the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, there is a veteran, call it SIG, special interest group. That special interest group is just like SCORE. They've got senior executives that have done this 53,000 times, done it a bunch of times, that are more than willing to help you with developing a solid business plan. Does that help, Jack?
Perfect. So Francisco asked a really good question. If you can recall, Scott, like the specific place on sam.gov to know what the agencies are buying? Do you remember where that is? Or
Yep. I was looking at it just before I just shut it down. So if you go to, excuse me, if you go to sam.gov, I think it's along the top. There's a series of options, and I'm pretty sure one of them says opportunities or something like that. There's also in the upper right, there's a search, right? And from there, you can just search on opportunities. But, and this is a great example, Zach. Hey, just go to sam.gov. Stupidly simplistic statement. It's a very all-inclusive kind of website now, right? They've got register to get to your new UIE. You've got, you have to spend some time in there and research it. But it's in there.
This is another really good one. Like your take on this, Scott. What are your recommendations and where to look for veteran business mentors? Where would you go? Like what do you see particularly as it relates to GovCon?
Number one, networking. Birds of a feather. You go to the VFW, you're going to get a cold beer and a friendly handshake. That's great. Is that a business mentor? No. There's a big difference between friendship and, hey, I'm sorry to hear your car got bashed into, right? There's friendship and then there's mentorship. The people who are going to help you get into business are more than likely, here's a surprise, in government business today. Look for the opportunities in the groups that focus on federal business. We happen to be one of them. IVMF happens to be one of them. All right. So attending the events that we host or that IVMF hosts, excuse me, or the VA hosts in their direct access program, or the SBA hosts, right? Those are birds of a feather kind of meetings, all right? Our meetings in particular, when I say our, IVMF and NVSBC, our meetings do focus on veteran business. So that's where you're going to find people in that category.
Perfect. I think this one's teed up for you very nice, but Marlene asked more information about our conference in May. Where do they go?
Oh, God bless you, Marlene. Thank you. If you go to nvsbc.org, as you go to that website, you'll see a banner flashing across the top, right? One of those three has the logo for VETS, the VETS 22 conference. Click on that and it'll take you over to the CVent site, which is where you can get all sorts of information, look at the current agenda, look at all the speakers. We've got a number of agency executives, a number of agency, ready for another acronym? OSDBUs, OSDBU. What's that? Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization, OSDBU. We've got a number of OSDBUs coming down to our conference in Florida, May 18 to 20 in Orlando. Not a bad location, folks. We're at the DoubleTree at SeaWorld. No, you can't go to SeaWorld. You got to go to the conference, right? But here's a bonus. If you're going to go to Orlando, Zach, how much do you think you're going to pay for a hotel room in Orlando? Oh, painful. Come to our conference. You get a hotel room for how much a night, Zach?
Good question, but I know it's a significant discount.
$109.
$109
in Orlando, Florida. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of Motel 6s you can't stay at for $109. All right. The conference is a 3-day opportunity to network with around 500 of your peers and business executives from companies that have made it through that initial tunnel of how do I get into business, and federal business leaders from government agencies, including GSA, DOD, VA, SBA, State Department, Department of Education. Help me here, Zach. Who else? We got a lot of agencies coming.
Even like to put a bow on that, like one of the we keep hearing time and time again from folks who receive scholarships to come to our conference, which we have a scholarship program for those starting out. A lot of the folks that are, wanting to get into this GovCon space, like veterans know, like as Scott alluded to, veterans helping veterans, particularly the conference has been an opportunity for folks who reference their first experience of trying to find someone to team with, like who could I mentor with? There's a lot of willingness to share in resources. So it's one of the spaces that NBSBC provides, similar to IVMF, where there are networking opportunities, connecting vets to vets, and those resources are there. So we have about 5 minutes left. I know Elvis is going to start to pull some of this, but a couple more questions if we can get them in, Scott Semple. NBSBC and or elsewhere, like who can provide specific feedback for business plans? Where would you go?
I would first go to the PTAPs. I mean, that's that's a big part of their mission statement. The SBA, excuse me, the SBA creates, has through their network of local offices, they have put together a network of people who have done this a lot, who understand the requirements. So for instance, at our conference last year, Vets 21, I met a number of people. I met the woman who runs the SBA office from Louisiana. Oh my golly, this woman has done it, been there, has owned her own business. She understands how to go into business, right? She is of great assistance to you in taking a look at your business plan and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, right? You are eventually going to need a friendly banker, right? If you bank with Bank of America, guess what? Those people are there to help you. Go to Bank of America, whoever you're working with, and say, look, I know I'm not going to get a loan from you this year, but a couple of years from now I might, because I'm aggressive. I'm going to grow the heck out of my business. Could you folks take a look at my business plan today? Just give me some comments about what you would need to feel comfortable in making a loan to me, small loan, 20,000 bucks. All right. Use all the resources you can think of. Right. And again, I go right back to it. Networking, networking, networking. They say in real estate, there's 3 important things: location, location, location. In starting your business and getting a good business plan together, right? It's networking, networking, networking. If you meet somebody who that's a veteran who has been in business, run it by them. Run your business plan by them, right? Not everybody. You don't want to just post it on the net, right? That's a little crazy. But as you meet people that are successful veteran entrepreneurs, use them to tell you what they did and review your business plan and help you think about how to improve that plan.
Another good one that came in, a lot of good comments here. Talk about classification, top secret. Like, how does folks find classified work for companies whose members are top secret? Like, any ideas there?
Top secret, let's be honest, is a kind of exclusive club. I've had a top secret clearance for an awful long time. And top secret is simply, so there's a series of classifications of how secure documents are: public trust, secret, top secret, and then you go into other things. In the Department of Energy, they have a whole different classification. That is kind of that's a graduate level topic. This is kind of a undergraduate seminar. But we could talk about that one later. But suffice to say, if you want to work in the top secret environment as a veteran, that's a very, very good, that's a very lucrative area to get into. Go right back to what we were just saying. Find a mentor, network with enough companies that are in that marketplace, and find a veteran who's friendly enough to give you their ear, spend a half an hour, talk with you specifically about how I get into that marketplace.
Last one, if we can steal it, you got to be quick, Scott. Anyone specifically in the GSA? Like, where do you go for the GSA if you want to work in real estate? Like, do we know anyone? How do you find someone like that
If
who
you
works
want to work
with
in
GSA?
if you want to work in real estate in the federal government, this sounds very solicitous, but I'm going to say it. Come to our conference. We have 6 people from the General Services Administration, including many of the top brass who are going to be attending and speakers at our conference. The way our conference is set up is we have multiple coffee breaks, opportunities to meet with these people, a quick handshake and an appropriately quick question, and have an opportunity to chat with them while you're at the conference.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. So Scott, Zach, thank you guys so much. And everybody, thank you for participating. Thank you for your questions. I will share in our follow-up survey the VETS conference, VETS 22, that Scott has been talking about. And just make sure I'll ask Scott and Zach to see if they would like to share their LinkedIn profiles so that I can put that in a follow-up email as well. Besides that, thank you again, Zach and Scott, and I'll see you all guys next time. Take care.
Thank you so much, Elvis.
Thanks, everyone.